They say family is blood, but sometimes they cut the deepest. I put on a uniform to save strangers, only to find my own family using my sweat to gild their lies. I learned this on a wet October afternoon in Seattle, when my mother kicked me out because my gear smelled like smoke. But people living inside perfect illusions forget one fact. The truth is a wildfire, and it cannot be contained forever. Hello to the wonderful audience of Vivian Revenge Stories. Unfortunately, YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, leaving us without the budget to keep operating and bringing these tales to you. If you enjoyed today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking team to survive and keep creating for you. You can easily donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on your screen or by clicking the PayPal link in the description or the comment section below. My name is Riley Cunningham. I had been gripping the steering wheel of my beat-up truck for 8 straight hours, navigating away from the burning mountains of Oregon. The wildfires had turned the sky into a bruised purple canopy, raining ash onto the windshield like snow. But as I crossed the bridge into Bellevue, Washington, the smoke cleared into the crisp, unblemished chill of wealth. I was pulling up to a $1 million luxury apartment complex. It was my younger sister Chloe's housewarming party, an event she had demanded I attend for months. I stepped out of the truck, my boots heavy as lead blocks. I was still wearing my Vanguard Tactical Rescue uniform. The thick, fire-resistant fabric was stiff with dried mud, soot, and sweat. My muscles screamed in protest with every movement, the undeniable consequence of a grueling 48-hour continuous search and rescue operation. We had been digging through scorched earth and unstable debris without a wink of sleep, trying to pull survivors from a nightmare landscape. My throat tasted like copper and burnt pine. I had driven straight here because family was supposed to matter, though Chloe had never bothered to ask where I would be coming from or what I had been doing. I rode the glass elevator up to the penthouse, my reflection staring back at me like a ghost from a war zone. The doors slid open, and I was instantly hit by a wall of clinking crystal, the pop of expensive champagne, and the blinding flash of professional ring lights. The massive open-concept room was packed with Seattle's tech elite, angel investors, and social media personalities. They smelled of designer cologne, expensive perfumes, and unearned confidence. And then there was me, standing on their pristine white rug, smelling like charred wood and sheer exhaustion. The lively chatter died down rapidly as I walked into the grand foyer. Chloe spotted me first. She was wearing a sleek designer silk slip dress, holding a flute of something bubbly that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Instead of relief or happiness at seeing her older sister alive, her face contorted into pure, unadulterated disgust. She marched over, her heels clicking aggressively against the imported marble floor. "Are you completely out of your mind?" she hissed, her voice low but razor-sharp. "You show up to my housewarming looking like a vagrant? Did you deliberately dress like a slob just to ruin my aesthetic for the photos?" Before I could even process the absurdity and cruelty of her words, Julian appeared beside her. Julian was Chloe's husband, a self-proclaimed alpha male influencer who had built a massive online following selling overpriced wilderness survival courses and tactical gear. He wore a perfectly tailored custom suit that had probably never seen a drop of rain, let alone the unforgiving wild he claimed to conquer. He looked me up and down, a mocking smirk playing on his flawless face. "Wow, Riley," Julian announced, his voice booming enough to ensure the surrounding wealthy guests could hear every word. "Still playing the tragic hero, I see. Did you really have to bring the actual dirt in here just to beg for a little attention? We get it. You work outside. You do not have to make it your entire personality." A few polite, uncomfortable titters rippled through the nearest cluster of guests. I stared at him. The man who sold survival kits with heavy markups online was mocking the woman who actually pulled crushed bodies out of landslides. My jaw tightened, but the exhaustion was too heavy to even form a retort. Then, a manicured hand, grabbed my elbow with a vice grip. It was my mother, Eleanor. She dragged me away from the crowd, her face flushed with a terrifying mix of fury and intense embarrassment. She shoved me into a dimly lit alcove near the coat check, away from the prying eyes of her new wealthy peers. "How dare you humiliate this family?" she whispered fiercely. Her eyes, cold and calculating, darted around to make sure no one of importance was watching us. "Julian and Chloe are hosting incredibly important investors tonight, and you drag yourself in here reeking of smoke, looking like absolute trash. You are a disgrace, Riley." I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. My eyes burned, not from the wildfire smoke, but from the sudden, sharp realization of who she truly was. "Mom, I just came off a 48-hour deployment. We lost people. I just wanted to be here for Chloe." "I do not care about your excuses," Eleanor snapped, cutting me off completely. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger toward the expensive solid oak front door. "Do not step into this house until you know how to dress like a civilized human being. Get out." I looked past her shoulder. Chloe was laughing brightly with a venture capitalist, completely ignoring my presence. Julian was adjusting his expensive cuffs, basking in the glow of his own inflated ego and the attention of his sycophants. Not a single person in that glittering, millionaire-filled room stepped forward. No one asked if I was hurt. No one asked if I was okay. I did not yell. I did not explain the sheer hell I had just crawled out of or the lives I had tried to save. I simply looked at my mother, turned around, and walked back out the heavy oak door. As it clicked shut behind me, the fake, ringing laughter of the party swallowed the silence, leaving me entirely alone in the hallway. The drive away from Bellevue felt like plunging into an icy river. The glittering skyline faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the suffocating darkness of the empty highway. I drove aimlessly for miles until my trembling hands could no longer grip the steering wheel. I pulled into a deserted gas station on the edge of the city. The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drumming against the metal roof of my rusted truck. I sat in the sickly yellow glow of a flickering neon sign, put the engine in park, and then the dam finally broke. I dropped my head against the cold, hard plastic of the steering wheel and let the tears fall freely. They were not just tears of physical exhaustion. They were tears of a profound, hollow betrayal. They thought I wore my uniform for attention. They thought I dragged the dirt of the landslide into their pristine, perfumed world as some kind of arrogant statement. The agonizing truth was something I never got the chance to say. Before I drove to Chloe's party, I had to stop at a local funeral home. I had to sit in a quiet, sterile room and hand over a melted wedding band and a scorched helmet to the young, pregnant wife of a local firefighter. He had died in the mudslide, buried under thousands of pounds of earth while trying to evacuate a trapped family. His widow had begged me to come in my full-duty uniform. She wanted to see the Vanguard Tactical Rescue insignia. She wanted a formal military honor for the man who would never get to hold his unborn child. I wore the smoke and the ash because it was the last physical connection to a hero. I wore it for her, and I simply did not have time to change if I wanted to keep my promise to attend my sister's milestone event. My phone vibrated violently in the cup holder, the harsh glare of the screen illuminating the dark cabin. It was a relentless barrage of text messages. One from Chloe flashed across the screen. "I cannot believe you tried to make tonight about you. You are so violently jealous of Julian and everything we have built." Another message from my mother followed a minute later. "Do not bother calling until you are ready to apologize. Your bitterness is toxic. Learn to be happy for your sister for once." Jealous, toxic, bitter. The words twisted like a serrated knife in my gut. I closed my eyes and let the crushing weight of the last decade press the breath out of my lungs. When my father passed away suddenly 12 years ago, he left us with nothing but a mountain of crushing debt. I had a full academic scholarship waiting for me at a prestigious university. I threw that acceptance letter in the trash without a second thought. I enlisted, took the hardest, most dangerous deployments, and sent every single paycheck home. I paid tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills for my mother. I paid the exorbitant tuition for Chloe's elite private college so she would never feel inferior to her wealthy friends. I traded my youth, my dreams, and my very blood so they could climb the social ladder. And the most sickening irony of it all was the $1 million apartment they had just banished me from. Chloe strutted across those imported floors, absolutely convinced she was the queen of a self-made empire. She believed Julian was a financial genius. But 2 years ago, Julian's survival gear company was a sinking ship. He was completely bankrupt, facing the terrifying reality of losing everything and dragging my sister down into poverty. In the dead of night, he came to my cramped apartment, crying and begging. So I did what I always did. I played the protector. I signed my name as the sole guarantor on a predatory, high-risk mortgage. Every single brick of that luxury penthouse, every drop of champagne they poured tonight, was secured by my signature and my credit score. I was literally carrying the crushing weight of their fake empire on my exhausted shoulders. I wiped the tears from my face, the sadness evaporating into a cold, hardened rage. I put the truck in drive and headed to my tiny, damp apartment on the wrong side of town. When I finally walked through my flimsy door, the silence of the empty rooms wrapped around me. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and slowly began taking off the uniform. I unpinned my Vanguard unit patches. I removed the commendation bars. I took off the heavy boots. I folded everything with meticulous care and placed the insignia into a small wooden box on my dresser. I looked at my bruised, soot-stained hands. For over a decade, I had been the shield for people who used me as a stepping stone. As I closed the lid of the wooden box, I made a silent, unbreakable promise to myself. This was the absolute last time I would ever let them trample me. The era of my blind loyalty was over. 2 full weeks passed in absolute, unbroken silence. I did not reach out, and I did not check my messages. I severed the digital cord entirely. Instead, I threw myself back into the brutal, unforgiving rhythm of the Vanguard Tactical Rescue Base. I spent 10 hours a day running tactical drills, rappelling from helicopters, and dragging 150-pound dummies through obstacle courses until my muscles screamed. The physical exhaustion was a welcome anesthetic. It kept the memories of that glittering, suffocating penthouse locked far away in the back of my mind. While I was sweating in the dirt, my brother-in-law was busy polishing his plastic crown. Julian was in the final promotional push for his upcoming book, titled The Art of Survival and Leadership. Even with my accounts muted, his sponsored advertisements were a pervasive digital plague. If you opened any social media app, there was Julian. He was constantly posting heavily filtered, dramatic videos of himself standing on scenic overlooks, dressed in immaculate tactical gear that had never seen a speck of real mud. He would stare intensely into the camera, delivering empty monologues about grit, about conquering the wild, and about staring death in the face to find your true alpha potential. He was selling a rugged fantasy to people desperate for meaning, and they were buying it blindly. His highly produced clips were raking in tens of millions of views. He was hailed as a modern-day pioneer, a rugged guru for the digital age. It was a masterclass in the toxic art of manufacturing a fake life for profit. But the facade of a perfectly curated online empire is fragile. I was not there to witness the exact moment the glass shattered, but Chloe would later confess every agonizing, humiliating detail to me. It happened on a crisp Tuesday morning. Julian had a highly publicized virtual interview scheduled with a major morning talk show, and Chloe was frantically tidying up his sprawling home office to ensure the background looked flawless for the webcam. She knelt down to adjust a heavy antique oak filing cabinet behind his desk. As she pushed it, a false bottom drawer suddenly slipped off its tracks, and a thick, heavy stack of manila folders violently spilled onto the imported Persian rug. Chloe initially assumed they were early drafts of his best-selling manuscript or perhaps confidential marketing strategies. She gathered the papers with care, but as her eyes caught the bold red lettering on the top page, her breath hitched. These were not book chapters. They were aggressive final warning notices from collection agencies. There were statements showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in hidden high-interest debt. There were letters threatening immediate asset freezes. And then, buried beneath the mountain of financial ruin, she found a thick, legally binding document. It was the master mortgage agreement for the very same million-dollar apartment she was standing inside. Chloe scanned the paperwork, looking for Julian's name, looking for his supposedly infinite corporate backing. Instead, her eyes landed on the guarantor's signature line at the bottom of the final page. Her heart dropped into her stomach. It was my handwriting, Riley Cunningham. The sister she had just publicly humiliated and banished for being poor and dirty was the sole financial pillar keeping a roof over her head. The sheer shock mutated rapidly into a frantic, breathless panic. Julian was out attending an exclusive networking brunch, so Chloe rushed to his sleek silver laptop left open on the desk. Driven by a desperate need to uncover just how deep the lies went, she bypassed his simple password and began tearing through his hard drive. She searched for hidden bank accounts or offshore funds, but she stumbled into a digital graveyard that was infinitely more disturbing. Hidden deep within his files was a password-protected folder labeled Inspiration. Chloe, knowing his predictable habits, cracked it open within minutes. What she found inside made a wave of absolute nausea wash over her. The folder was practically overflowing with hundreds of forwarded emails and downloaded attachments. But they were not emails sent to Julian. They were official Vanguard Tactical Rescue internal mission reports, confidential trauma debriefings, and highly personal digital journal entries. Julian had somehow covertly maintained access to a shared family cloud storage account I had foolishly forgotten to secure years ago. Chloe sat frozen in the sterile blue light of the monitor, reading the gruesome, terrifying accounts of my real-life deployments. She read the exact timeline of the 48-hour mudslide rescue. She read about the blinding terror of a flash flood where I nearly lost my team. She read about the agonizing physical pain of carrying a civilian miles through a freezing blizzard. A sickening, terrifying realization began to take hold. Chloe pulled up the finalized digital manuscript of Julian's highly anticipated survival book. She placed the glossy, inspirational chapters side by side with my classified, blood-stained mission logs. The details were essentially copied and pasted. The spectacular, life-altering, near-death experiences Julian was using to sell books. The profound lessons of survival he preached to his millions of followers. The very foundation of his entire alpha male empire were completely fabricated. He had never faced a single moment of actual peril. Every drop of blood, every tear, and every harrowing lesson he claimed as his own belonged entirely to me. He had not just weaponized my credit score to buy his luxury life. He had systematically stolen my trauma to build his fame. Chloe sat completely paralyzed as the blue glow of the screen washed over her face. The sheer scale of the deception was suffocating. Desperate for a lifeline, her trembling fingers found her phone, and she dialed our mother. When Eleanor answered, Chloe could barely form the words. She choked out the truth about the forged mortgage, the stolen rescue logs, and the impending financial ruin. She expected maternal outrage, or at least shock. Instead, an eerie, calculated calm echoed through the receiver. "Chloe, you need to lower your voice and stop being so dramatic," Eleanor sighed, the clinking of a ceramic teacup sounding clearly in the background. "So what if Julian embellished a few stories? The man is a visionary. He is building a brand. Do you have any idea how much money that book deal is worth? Do not ruin this over some misplaced guilt about your sister. Riley is tough. She can handle it. Just close the laptop, put the papers back, and look the other way. He is giving you the life you deserve." The line went dead. Chloe stared at the darkened screen of her phone. Eleanor's words felt like a bucket of ice water dumped directly over her head. In that chilling moment, the final veil was ripped away. Chloe finally saw the grotesque reality of our family dynamic. I was not a daughter or a sister to them. I was a battery. I was an infinite disposable resource they plugged into whenever they needed to fund their delusions of grandeur, and the second my energy was drained, I was discarded for being unsightly. The guilt she felt morphed rapidly into a burning investigative frenzy. She opened a new tab on Julian's browser and began tracking his financial routing numbers. She dug past the domestic bank accounts and found a complicated web of offshore wire transfers. Following the digital money trail, she uncovered a freshly registered corporate entity. Julian had quietly established a massive nonprofit organization called the Wilderness Veteran Support Fund. On paper, it looked like a noble charity designed to help traumatized military and rescue personnel transition into civilian life. In reality, it was a hollow shell company specifically engineered to launder his incoming book profits and evade massive tax liabilities. The centerpiece of this fraudulent scheme was scheduled to happen in just 4 days. Julian was hosting a highly publicized black tie fundraising gala at the most exclusive hotel in downtown Seattle. He was planning to invite the wealthiest donors in the state, parade his fake charity around, and secure millions of dollars in tax-free investments based entirely on the blood I had spilled in the field. While Chloe was uncovering the criminal depths of her husband's empire, my own isolated world was being aggressively breached. I was sitting in the stark, fluorescent-lit office of Commander Vance. Vance was a woman forged from iron and discipline, a seasoned veteran who did not entertain excuses or insubordination. She slid a thick, gold-embossed envelope across her metal desk. "You are going to Seattle this Friday, Cunningham," Vance stated, her voice leaving absolutely zero room for negotiation. The mayor's office just sent over VIP invitations to a massive veteran charity gala. They specifically requested a highly decorated Vanguard tactical officer to attend as a visual representative of our unit. You are our most commended rescue specialist. You are going. I looked down at the ornate card. The moment I saw Julian's name printed in arrogant cursive at the top, a wave of visceral sickness hit me. I pushed the envelope back across the desk violently. "With all due respect, Commander, I cannot do this," I said. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. These people are my family, and I have completely severed ties with them. The host is a fraud. It is a toxic environment, and I refuse to be paraded around for their amusement. Vance did not blink. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "I do not care about your family drama, Riley. This is not a request. This is a public relations directive from the top brass. Vanguard needs the funding and the goodwill this event will generate. Put on your dress uniform, show up, shake hands, and keep your mouth shut. That is a direct military order." I was trapped. I had spent 2 weeks meticulously building a fortress around my peace of mind, and now I was being dragged directly back into the snake pit by the very military structure I trusted. I began preparing myself for a night of psychological torture, forced to stand in a room with the people I despised most in this world. Across the city, Chloe was staring at the glowing evidence on her screen, standing at the most terrifying crossroads of her life. She could take our mother's advice, close the laptop, and comfortably float along in her fake velvet and champagne existence. Or she could pack every single piece of damning evidence onto a flash drive, walk into that glittering ballroom, and completely detonate the empire of the man she married. It was a choice between her own survival and the justice her sister was owed. The grand ballroom of the Zenith Pearl Hotel was a blinding sea of crystal chandeliers and gold leaf. It was Friday evening, and Seattle's wealthiest elite had gathered in their finest custom tuxedos and trailing silk gowns. The air was thick with the suffocating scent of expensive orchids and the quiet hum of predatory networking. At the front of the massive hall, a towering digital screen displayed the logo of the Wilderness Veteran Support Fund. Standing beneath it, bathed in the warm glow of professional stage lighting, was Julian. He looked like a cinematic savior, draped in a perfectly tailored midnight blue tuxedo. He was gripping a sleek microphone, projecting his deep, practiced voice across the room, weaving a captivating tapestry of lies about courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable human spirit. Hundreds of investors and media personnel hung onto his every fabricated word. The heavy brass doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. I walked into the glittering space with Commander Vance at my side. I was wearing my formal Class A dress uniform. It was perfectly pressed, the creases sharp enough to draw blood. Pinned to the left side of my chest was a heavy row of metallic ribbons and medals. Tangible metal forged from real blood, shattered bones, and pure terror. There was the Medal for Valor from the Flash Flood, the Commendation from the 50-Hour Mountain Rescue, and the purple ribbon from a helicopter crash. As Vance and I stepped onto the plush crimson carpet, an undeniable wave of awkwardness rippled through the immediate crowd. The polite clapping faltered. Wealthy socialites holding glasses of vintage champagne parted instinctively, their eyes darting nervously between my authentic military presence and the glamorous, manicured aesthetic of the party. Before I could even take 20 steps into the room, a sharp grip dug into my forearm. It was my mother. Eleanor materialized from the crowd like a well-dressed ghost, her fingers digging into my blazer with terrifying strength. She dragged me slightly behind a towering pillar of white roses, out of the direct line of the media cameras. Her eyes were wide with a frantic, unhinged energy. "I do not know why you are here," Eleanor hissed through gritted, perfectly whitened teeth, her voice a venomous whisper. "But you listen to me very carefully. You will not cause a scene tonight. Julian is about to secure millions of dollars in funding for this family. You will stand there, you will smile, and you will support your brother-in-law. Do not ruin this with your selfish drama. Am I understood?" I looked down at her manicured hand gripping my decorated chest, feeling absolutely nothing. Before I could formulate a response, the booming sound of the public address system interrupted us. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are graced by a very special presence tonight," Julian announced, his voice oozing with a sickening manufactured warmth. He was pointing directly at me, his flawless white smile flashing for the flashing bulbs of the press photographers. The spotlight violently swung across the room, blinding me as it pinned me against the wall. "My incredible sister-in-law, Riley Cunningham, has just arrived. She is a decorated officer with the Vanguard Tactical Rescue Unit. Riley, please come up here and join me." The entire ballroom erupted into polite, expectant applause. Commander Vance nudged me forward, a silent reminder of my military orders. My boots felt like lead as I marched down the center aisle. Every eye in the room was dissecting me. Julian was standing at the edge of the stage, his arms wide open in a gesture of fake familial love. He was using me. He was leveraging the real medals on my chest to validate the fake charity he had built on my stolen pain. The audacity was so profound, it made my vision blur at the edges. Down in the center of the audience, standing rigidly near a table of venture capitalists, was Chloe. She was wearing a stunning emerald gown, but her face was completely drained of color. Her knuckles were white. Hidden securely in the palm of her right hand, she was gripping a small silver USB drive. It contained every forged document, every stolen mission log, and the entire architecture of Julian's financial crimes. Chloe watched me ascend the short flight of stairs to the stage. For the first time in her life, she was not looking at me with disgust or jealousy. She saw the heavy, exhausted slump of my shoulders. She saw the deep, permanent shadows under my eyes. She saw the absolute, crushing weight of a woman who had bled herself dry for a family that only saw her as a prop. I stepped up to the podium. Julian immediately moved to embrace me, reaching his arm out to wrap around my shoulders for the perfect, highly profitable media photo. He wanted the world to see the rugged influencer standing shoulder to shoulder with the decorated hero. I did not step into his embrace. Instead, I planted my boots firmly on the polished wood. I raised my left hand and pushed his chest back with a rigid, undeniable force. The smile on Julian's face froze, cracking slightly at the edges as confusion washed over his features. I reached out and pulled the microphone directly from his trembling fingers. I turned my back to him entirely and faced the blinding sea of cameras and the hundreds of wealthy donors. I tapped the microphone once. The sharp, echoing thud cut through the massive hall. The polite applause died instantly. The hushed whispers evaporated. The sprawling, glittering ballroom plunged into a dead, suffocating silence. I looked out into the crowd, my heart beating with a slow, terrifying rhythm. I was finally ready to burn the illusion to the ground. I stared directly into the glowing red lens of the primary television camera broadcasting this event live across the state. I did not scream. I did not hurl insults. My voice, when it finally echoed through the massive speakers, was a terrifying, deadpan calm. December 12th, 2019. The Cascades. 3 hikers caught in an avalanche. 2 pulled out alive. 1 pronounced dead at the scene. I was the one who dug the frozen bodies out of the snow. A collective gasp swept through the wealthy crowd. I kept my eyes locked on the camera. August 4th, 2022. A Category 4 flash flood in the valley. A family of 4 trapped on the roof of their sedan. I fractured 2 ribs, pulling the youngest daughter to safety just before the vehicle was swept away. Julian's artificial tan suddenly vanished, leaving him a sickening shade of gray. He lunged forward, his hands grasping desperately for the microphone. "Turn it off! Someone cut the audio!" he barked, his carefully crafted alpha male persona crumbling into frantic cowardice. Before his manicured fingers could even brush the metal stand, a shadow moved to my right. Commander Vance stepped forward, placing her imposing figure squarely between Julian and me. She did not say a single word. She just crossed her arms and glared at him with the cold, hardened stare of a combat veteran. Julian froze, physically intimidated by a woman who had actually seen the wars he only pretended to fight. I turned my gaze back to the sea of horrified socialites and journalists. Every harrowing chapter of Julian's highly anticipated book, every lesson of survival he has sold you, is a lie. He stole my classified mission logs. He packaged my trauma, my broken bones, and the actual blood of my team to sell you a fantasy. The camera flashes began firing like strobe lights. Reporters were already typing furiously on their phones. But his theft does not stop at stolen valor, I continued, my voice steady and unyielding. 2 weeks ago, my mother and my sister kicked me out of their $1 million penthouse because my rescue uniform was dirty. They banished me from the very home that I alone am paying for. I signed the high-risk guarantor mortgage to save this fake visionary from total bankruptcy 2 years ago. I am drowning in debt so he can wear a custom tuxedo and stand before you tonight, asking for your money. The ballroom erupted into a chaotic symphony of shocked murmurs and frantic whispers. But the true execution was just beginning. Footsteps echoed loudly up the wooden stairs of the stage. Chloe walked into the blinding spotlight. She marched straight past a paralyzed Julian and approached the main audio-visual control podium. Without a hint of hesitation, she jammed a silver flash drive into the main port. The towering digital screen behind us, which just moments ago displayed the fraudulent charity logo, flickered aggressively. Suddenly, the pristine screen was plastered with undeniable truth. Stolen Vanguard mission emails were displayed side by side with Julian's book drafts. Offshore bank routing numbers flashed across the screen. The forged tax documents proving his veteran charity was nothing, but a hollow shell company designed to launder money were laid bare for everyone to see. The wealthy donors in the front row began standing up, their faces contorted in disgust. Julian stumbled backward, his hands pulling at his hair. "Chloe, what are you doing? You are destroying us," he pleaded, his voice cracking horribly. Chloe turned to him. She slowly slid the massive, expensive diamond ring off her finger. With a sharp, practiced motion, she threw it directly at his face. The heavy ring struck his cheekbone and bounced off, clattering loudly across the stage, right in front of the rolling media cameras. "I am destroying nothing," Chloe declared, her voice ringing clear and resolute through the microphone I handed her. "I am just taking out the trash. I am divorcing you, Julian. You are finished." Total pandemonium broke out. Investors were shouting at the stage, demanding their money back. Journalists were shouting questions. Security guards were scrambling to maintain order. Through the absolute chaos, my mother pushed her way to the front. Eleanor's face was a mask of pure terror. The wealthy society she had worshipped her entire life was actively watching her family completely disintegrate. She scrambled up the side steps of the stage, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, her mascara running in dark streaks. She reached out with trembling, desperate hands and grabbed my wrist. "Riley, please," Eleanor sobbed, completely stripped of her arrogance. "Please fix this. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. We are family. I am your mother. Please forgive me." I looked down at the woman who had spent my entire life bleeding me dry. I felt no anger anymore. I felt no sadness. The well was completely empty. I slowly, firmly pulled my wrist out of her grasp. I looked her dead in the eye. "I have paid my blood debt to this family in full," I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the air between us. "From now on, I am free." I did not wait for her reaction. I turned my back on Eleanor, Julian, and the glittering wreckage of their fake empire. Commander Vance gave me a curt, respectful nod, and together, we walked straight down the center aisle. The crowd parted for us in absolute silence. We pushed through the heavy brass doors of the hotel and stepped out into the crisp, biting night air of Seattle. The neon lights of the city reflected off the wet pavement. I walked to the edge of the parking lot, climbed into the cab of my rusted, beat-up truck, and turned the ignition. The engine roared to life, loud and imperfect. I shifted into gear and drove away from the glittering skyline, leaving it far behind in the rearview mirror. It was not a fairy tale ending, and the financial scars would take a long time to heal. But as I merged onto the empty, dark highway, breathing in the scent of rain and old leather, I realized something beautiful. It was the first time in my life I was truly breathing for myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please share your location with me in the comments section below. If you found today's story engaging and meaningful, please consider helping us out with just $1. You can easily do this by scanning the PayPal QR code on your screen or by clicking the PayPal link in the description or the pinned comment. Because YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, your kind donations are the only way we can pay our dedicated team, help them feed their families, and ensure we can keep creating more wonderful stories for you. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and please take care.